Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and today we are going to dive back into the Tower of Terror. Now, up until this point, we've led you into some of the conceptual and blue sky, but now we need to dive into the actual storyline, construction, and ride mechanics. I will warn you, this gets really pretty heady, and we're pretty lucky and fortunate because we got some resources shared with us that we're very excited that don't really exist anywhere else unless you're an Imagineer. So with me to dive into these wonderful resources is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, how we doing?
Hey, I'm good. I'm checking in to another episode of Tower of Terror. Before we get into this episode, we have an amazing collection of Tower of Terror resources. So I want to thank Disney historian and former cast member Joshua Harris, who has shared with an incredible amount of source material with us from his personal collection. And he has been a historian for many, many years. He is also the creator of E82, the Epcot Legacy, which is a multi-decade endeavor created with the specific purpose of revitalizing the concepts of Epcot Center and its dedication to the preservation, celebration, and restoration of Epcot's original philosophy that with imagination, commitment, and dedication, we can create a new tomorrow. So really, really wonderful project if you're interested in Epcot history specifically. Really, really great videos, restored videos, lots of great history there. So make sure you support Joshua and his efforts as a historian by visiting that website just as a thank you for contributing to this series. Because honestly, some of these resources we wouldn't find anywhere else. So thank you, Joshua, for that.
I would argue without Joshua's help from epcotlegacy.com, we would not have nearly as much information as we do. And this is a crazy peek under the tent. So we are forever indebted, and thank you.
One of the things that we have from this is actually an Imagineering show information guide from 1999, which we can't actually show you the document.
That's funny, a show guide we can't show.
But there is some really wonderful quotes from the Imagineers and some story in there that we're going to share with you today because we can actually share the information. So that being said, I have a great quote from Michael Eisner, Kirk's favorite dude. Who said, "The Twilight Zone Tower of Terror is our chance to pay tribute to the horror and science fiction genres that have been so vital to Hollywood. It's something we haven't done in an attraction yet, so we're going to do it in the biggest way possible. This will be the most exciting thrill ride we have ever created." So Kirk and I were trying to figure out how to organize this episode. We decided we haven't done the story yet. We did a lot of the concept art last week, but it was so involved that we didn't quite get to the story. So that's where we're going to start, is with the story of this. And I have just a little note about the WDI show writer, Michael Sprout. He was the one that, after Kevin Rafferty kind of like had the initial idea, he's the one that finessed the script and the storyline. So I have a quote from him about it. And he said, "Rod Serling every week said that he unlocked the door to another dimension, to the fifth dimension. So we thought, we'll take you there. This is something he couldn't do. He showed stories about the place, but we thought that if we could actually put you in the Twilight Zone, this would be something unique." So invariably, the stories dealt with ordinary people in ordinary situations that have extraordinary things happening to them. So this idea of walking into a hotel and confronting an elevator that takes you into another dimension, that's the twist that provides a doorway into the Twilight Zone. We also knew that most of the people visiting Disney MGM Studios were staying in hotels and facing elevators and having this experience every day. So we wanted to twist that little common experience of theirs, a device known to be used on Twilight Zone, and make that the basis, the starting point of the supernatural story. It just fits in so nicely with the themes Rod Serling dealt with consistently. So I love, Kirk, this idea of all of these guests are probably staying at a hotel, unless they're local, but most of them are not. And so let's take something that they're going to encounter either on the morning of or on the way back from this ride and turn it into a scary thing.
It's a great way to unlock a new fear and force a lot of people to take the stairs.
It's true. They'll get their steps in. It'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
So with the blessing of Carol Serling, which is Rod Serling's widow, they created a new Twilight Zone episode, calling it a Lost Twilight Zone episode. So Kirk, do you want to talk a little bit about the story, the general story as we know it of Twilight Zone?
Sure, yeah. Let me add on top to what you were saying, because I think all of this kind of like adds in, right? So like we get this Twilight Zone, but remember, it had to be something that was thrilling. So packaging off of last week's talking about free fall experiences and what they actually built with that, not using a rollout bank. We have the finalized story for the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, which is on Halloween night, 1939, a lightning bolt strikes the Hollywood Tower Hotel, causing an entire guest wing and elevator carrying 5 people to vanish. The hotel closes down, remaining untouched for decades. When guests return, they become the stars of a new episode of the Twilight Zone. And this eerie immersive experience enhances through actual props that were used in the Twilight Zone episodes and even that Rod Serling introduction. We do get to see like storyboard, like frame by frame of what they actually filmed for this, which is pretty exciting. That was like one of the best resources we found.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And we'll show those storyboards as we kind of walk through the tower. For those of you who aren't familiar with Distory and how we do things here, we go really slow through these attractions, inch by inch at times. And we look at every single little detail that we can, try to find the history behind it, whether it's from Imagineering history, from where they located the prop, from where, or the history in the broader context of history of the world. So
we prefer to move at a standby pace rather than a lightning lane.
Truer words have never been spoken. So I have kind of a little bit more elaborate, because I actually have some names of some of these people for this.
Yeah, give us the guests.
Among those checking in on October 31st of 1939 were young singer Carolyn Crossan and her actor boyfriend Gilbert London, as well as the child actress Sally Shine, who with blonde curls and a frilly dress, so she kind of looks like Shirley Temple, with her stern governess Emmeline Partridge. Overworked bellman Dewey Todd assisted them all into the elevator to take them to the top floor, where a special party had started roughly 40 minutes earlier and is still going on in the Tip Top Club. The Tip Top Club, of course, is the inside joke in Imagineering for anyone over 6'6". We've talked about that before. As the elevator doors closed at 8:05 p.m., because 8 and 5 add up to 13, the elevator made its way to the top of the hotel. Its passengers, entire wing of the hotel, simply vanished with lightning striking and all of those kinds of things. The hotel became frozen in a Twilight Zone time and space, while the exterior had fallen into disrepair over the years. With overgrown vegetation, the interior remains untouched from the way that it was that frightful evening. But I have this interesting kind of note about one of the guys that they say is involved here is Cadwallader. And I watched this in a Twilight Zone episode called The Escape Clause from season 1. Cadwallader is actually kind of like the devil. So he's a supernatural being. And in this episode of The Escape Clause, he gets you to sell your soul to him. The hotel elevators were inspected by a man named Cadwallader, which I think is a really fun connection back to the Twilight Zone for the story. But that's not all for the story, because I do have from the Imagineering story information guide from 1999. There's just a little side note about this. There's a little connection to G-Force Records in here. Where
I love that. That is so fun.
Joshua, when he gave this to us, he said that wasn't really considered canon. It was just them kind of trying to cram a connection to Rock and Roller Coaster in here. So take it with a grain of sand, anything you hear about G-Force Records in this particular. It was only in 1999 that they added that in, and that's what we have this from. But anyway, so here's the story in the Imagineering Information Guide. The Hollywood Tower Hotel was built on the site of former Orange Grove early in the second decade of the 20th century, finally opening its doors to guests in 1917. And I want to pause and say that 1917 is also significant in Twilight Zone. There is an episode where a pilot disappears into a cloud in 1917 from World War I. And he disappears in time and space and like time travels, but he does disappear. So they picked 1917 most likely because of that episode of the Twilight Zone and its connection with time and space. The luxury hotel was strategically located at the intersection of Gower Street and the infant Sunset Boulevard in the heart of Hollywood. Over the next 2 decades, the area became the heart and soul of Tinseltown as grand movie palaces and exclusive nightclubs began popping up all over Sunset Boulevard, making it the premier playground of Hollywood royalty. And one stop everyone who was anyone made during a night on the town was the Hollywood Tower Hotel with its crown jewel, the infamous Top of the Tower Club, which is not what we know it to be, right? We know it
not the Tip Top Club. Yeah.
It's the Tip Top Club. So that, again, a grain of salt, not sand. A grain of salt for any of these things. The stars shine even brighter on the Sunset Strip in the early 1930s when G-Force Records, one of the music industry's leading labels, took up residence in a former orange packing facility right next door to the hotel. In addition to the label's own impressive roster of artists, many of the country's other top musicians booked the Sunset Studio for the recording sessions, enabling G-Force to supply its neighbor with a steady stream of high-powered guests. The Sunset Boulevard was the capital of the entertainment world, and the Hollywood Tower Hotel was its White House.
Can we take a pause here real quick?
Yeah, because I have something to say too. So
yeah. So one thing that's interesting about this, I don't know if this is canon or not, and I'm gonna have to go next time in Hollywood Studios, but have you ever noticed that the Rock and Roller Coaster building, especially on the side, has any kind of call outs to an orange packing facility?
I haven't noticed, but
yeah, me neither. I've never even heard that story once until we got to this show guide.
So there is history of Walt Disney World history, because part of the property that they purchased for Walt Disney World had an orange packing facility on it.
Right.
They used to build the park. Like they
correct.
They got the warehouse and they ended up like constructing things inside the warehouse for the original Walt Disney World in the 1970s.
Yes.
So it's a fun callback to Walt Disney World history that they threw that in there, which I think is really neat.
Right, but I'm curious as to, I swear, if there is one piece that says that is an orange packing facility, whether it's inside the ride when we're leaving the studio, because that is a building and we're walking outside, totally plausible that there might be something there.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out and let us know. Report back.
I'm curious.
Kirk.
Report.
Hooray, let me look to see next time I'm at tower.
Yeah, I will. During the golden age of Hollywood, every day was a holiday, and the stars never had to look long, far, or wide for a reason to throw a party. And the Hollywood Tower Hotel was their party center of choice. Gala movie premieres, the opening of ritzy new nightclub, an exclusive benefit performance at the Theater of the Stars or the Hollywood Hills Amphitheater. There always seemed to be cause for celebration on Sunset Boulevard, and the hotel, specifically its Top of the Tower Club, always seemed to rise to the occasion. And the highlight of every year's social calendar was the club's annual Halloween Masquerade Ball, where the entertainment industry's elite anonymously enjoy each other's company. But on October 31st, 1939, all of that would change forever.
The Hollywood Tower Hotel was a place to be on that fateful evening. The Hollywood Masquerade Ball was in full swing at the Top of the Tower Club. G-Force Records was hosting the music industry's first official awards banquet in the Hollywood Tower Grand Ballroom, and celebrities and civilians alike on the boulevard for a night at the movies or on the town flocked to the Hollywood Tower Hotel to take shelter from the freak thunderstorm that was sweeping across Southern California. Thanks for the sound effects there, Kirk.
You're welcome.
As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Mother Nature launched a violent assault on the Hollywood Tower Hotel. And at the witching hour itself, a bolt of lightning slammed into the left-hand side guest wing of the hotel. Upon impact, the entire guest wing and an elevator carrying one of Hollywood's royal couples, a young star, her governess, and a bellhop mysteriously vanished without a trace. Before dawn's first light, the Hollywood Tower Hotel was empty. Its halls and rooms were devoid of humanity, its great iron gate shut and locked tight. In a matter of hours, one of Tinseltown's finest showplaces was a ghost of its former self. The golden age had ended for the Hollywood Tower Hotel. Sunset Boulevard still teems with life. Films still make their premieres on the grand old movie places. Celebrities still flock to the nightclubs. And the shows still go on in the great outdoor amphitheaters. But now a ghost haunts the Sunset Strip. The Hollywood Tower Hotel. The crumbling hulk of a building still stands at the end of Sunset Boulevard, but the only thing living inside are its secrets. It towers above the Street of Dreams, casting its long, dark shadow across the heart of Tinseltown. And that's
Welcome to the most complete story of the tower you've ever heard.
Yeah, it's pretty involved. So, but it's amazing to hear all of that and get a
I'm with you. I mean, it's one thing to watch the pre-show and have a general guideline of, okay, a bunch of people, they're there, it's Halloween, zap, zap, we out. But now you're getting a connection, G-Force, you're getting a connection to the Tip Top Club or Top of the Tower Club. Yeah. And you're getting an insight as to why people would be there and celebrating, not just there for Halloween, and who the people are who are on that hotel.
Yeah, the Masquerade Ball. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and anonymously, dude. Bunch of eyes wide shut weirdos in there.
I do have a note from writer Michael Sprout as well. He said, a lot of people have told me they don't remember an episode about an elevator, and they're right. This is a lost episode. No one has ever seen it before. What we've tried to do is recreate the look and feel of the Twilight Zone show. The tone, the atmosphere, everything is meant to make you feel as if you've stepped into an episode. you've actually stepped into an episode. You're the one experiencing what it's like to go into the Twilight Zone. And then WDI's executive designer, Eric Jacobson, said, the great thing about this is that guests are involved. They get the chance to see themselves as playing a part in an episode of the show, which really throws right back to early Disneyland history when you were the character, when you went on those dark Fantasyland rides, right? So I love that there's a connection back to how Walt wanted things in Fantasyland, even way far forward in history, and for this park that's much farther away and different in concept than those original rides. So the story also provided a framework for the design and addressed a major concern. So thrill-averse guests complained that they didn't know about the steep and sudden drop at the end of Splash Mountain. And the guest relations issue prompted the corporate management to ask that guests be able to see what's in store for them inside the Tower of Terror. So the free-falling elevator had to be visible from the outside. So Michael Sprout said that meant we had to put a hole in the building, and it raised the question, why is there a hole in the building, right? What the heck's going on with that? That led to the story point with the lightning that's striking the hotel and whatnot, and the guests disappearing and sending them into the Twilight Zone. But as WDI show producer Lane Akiyama said, you can see it all. When you're in the elevator looking through an open doorway to where the missing wing used to be, you can see the back of the Hollywood Tower Hotel sign out over the studio. By the same token, when you're in the park, you can see these people falling from the top of the tower. That's where the name really came from. For most people who experience it, this will be a Tower of Terror.
Michael Eisner was a big fan of the thought of having something that was a thrill attraction. And that's why we're trying to level up the parks. And you're going to go on this terrifying tower, which we have to build next.
So it's really interesting how they got this elevator concept. We talked about how they had the free fall attraction, like Kirk mentioned, where they had that giant run out and they thought maybe they would have that for a little while. And then they're like, but it doesn't make sense for you to end up on your back in something that's supposed to be an elevator. So they had to do some research to find a different mechanism to work. Eric Jacobson said the concept team suggested using an off-the-shelf system and dressing it up in a way that would make it totally unique. At first, we envisioned it as a walk-through attraction with scary stuff that you do the free fall at the end of the ride. So this is like an early concept here. You can actually see a lot of this walk-through part of this attraction. And then they do have the elevator component as well. But I think in this one, you still ended up on your back in this particular version for this concept art. But he said, at first, we envisioned it as a walk-through attraction with scary stuff, and then you do the free fall ride at the end. Our idea of what the attraction was going to be was changing so much that we realized we should let the concept drive the ride system and not vice versa. But it's interesting because sometimes the ride vehicle does influence the design, because they needed capacity for the ride. So having a small, regular sized elevator wouldn't make sense because it wouldn't be good for capacity, right? Fit 5 people in a thing. A service elevator was the way to go about that, to have more people in it. And then having them go to the boiler room was the solution. So the lightning strike made regular elevators out of service, according to the story. And so in this case, the ride vehicle that influenced the story. So it's like there's a little bit of a back and forth of how that works, which I think is really interesting from a design perspective. Now the story, they're developing it. They don't want you on your back. They're like, okay, well, let's do an elevator. Well, they decided to meet with Otis Elevators. So they met at one of their newest state-of-the-art elevator cars that had just been installed in a 50-story building in LA, which was called the Gas Company Tower, which you can see here. They got in this elevator with the Otis Elevator dudes, and they talked with a technician outside the elevator, gave him instructions to send us down the elevator at the fastest possible speed. Okay, they're like, we want to feel like we're falling. But the thing was, they didn't feel a thing, as if they hadn't moved at all. And they said, oh, you want to feel the drop? Well, we've been working for over 100 years to perfect our systems, so you don't feel anything when you're in the elevator, which makes sense, right? For a state-of-the-art building, that you would just feel like a very smooth ride. That's not what the Imagineers were looking for. So they realized that they would need Disney's ride engineers to create something to produce the falling sensation with some outside help. So Imagineer Dave Crawford said, we're good at developing technologies here, but we're also good at misusing other people's technologies. They usually are frightened out of their minds because they've done everything in their power to do a certain thing and not put people in certain situations. It's kind of the magic of what Imagineers have, is seeing the potential in everyday objects to deliver these interesting guest experiences. And I do have a little picture of a project team jacket from Frank Mezzatesta. So this is it says Twilight Zone Tower of Terror permanent resident. This is from the project team. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty details of exactly how this ride works, just want to take a quick little break and just chat about a couple things we got going on at Walrus Carp and Disney Cicerone. So Kirk, what do you have going on over there at Walrus Carp?
Oh, we've got some epic merch going on over here.
As per usual.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to lie. We have showed you lots of different shirts for Dark Universe and Burke and Nintendo and Celestial and Ministry. The latest, though, I'm just going to focus on two things today. One would be our Constellations of Confection little Captain Choco, which we have now got officially out. Glow-in-the-dark croc charms for my little boy.
Oh,
my little tiny bear. Our little navigational dessert bear. So yeah, you can find him and all of our epic merch over at walruscarp.com. Kate, what are we doing? What's up? What's the latest?
So I've been really hard at work doing a lot of recording this week, audiobook recording of my latest book, A Glimmer of Pixie Dust, Finding Our Hope in the Disney Story, which is available on Amazon currently in ebook and paperback form, but it will be in audiobook on Audible when I get this project done. So just to kind of give you a little behind the scenes of like what is it like to record an audiobook? Well, it's very time consuming. And I'm a team of one over here. So I do my own narration in my own home with some soundproofing and whatnot. And then I edit it all, which takes quite some time, usually for like every hour of reading that I do, it takes, almost twice that to edit because of how you have to be so detailed going through it so that it sounds right. And also has to conform to a whole bunch of standards for ACX, which is what they use for Audible. So in case you're curious about the Audible book process, it's very involved and takes a while. And that's why it isn't out yet. Yes, Kirk?
Have you upgraded your system or are we still in a box?
You give away all my secrets.
I have to know. Come on, give us a little peek under the tent of audiobook recording.
Yeah, I don't have it up here, but I do. Because I can't soundproof my whole house. And where I currently record right now is in my closet, my 5x5 closet. My soundproofing is a little tiny little box, like the kind you would like store things in like a cube shelf. And then I have soundproofing material inside that box and my mic inside that box. And it actually works really well to record high quality audio. And Kirk's demonstrating the kind of soundproofing that we have. Mine's a little more egg cratey, but it's pretty much that. And it's
mine's like Ruffles. It's got ridges.
So, that's the reality of I do a lot of things and it sounds professional once it's done because I do a lot of editing to it and whatnot. And I use a great mic. So it all works out. But I always laugh because I always see all these other authors who are not independently published who have they go into the studio and they have people producing things for them and all they have to do is read it. And I was like, that's a nice life. I wonder what that's like.
But maybe they had traffic. Maybe they didn't get to spend time with their families. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like everything has trade-offs.
Yeah, no, it's great. I actually love being able to do it from home. It just is awful when my neighbor starts to mow his lawn and then I have to stop recording. Or the train goes by and you're like, oh yeah, I have to edit.
I'm going to have to redo that passage. I always felt like, it would be really challenging to get the same cadence down because every day you sound a little different. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know how sorry, just an aside.
Okay.
I don't know how you manage that.
I record at the same time of day, so my voice is all equally warmed up. So I usually around 1 p.m. is when I record. And so my voice is I've been up the right appropriate amount. And so my voice, because your voice will change during the day, the pitch of the timbre and the pitch of your voice will change based on if you're tired, and whatnot. So I try to record at the same time of day and I don't do it when I'm sick, obviously, because then you sound all raspy and awful. So.
Smelly cat, smelly cat, what are they feeding you?
So, yeah, a little behind the scenes of how to record an audiobook.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, because I think a lot of people believe that it's you have to have lots of stuff to be able to accomplish your dreams. But in reality, you just have to be a little bit creative like Kate is being right now.
Yeah. And the first time I ever did it, it was terrifying, but I figured it out. And now I've done 5 audiobooks. Okay, Kirk, let's jump back into the Tower of Terror.
Sure.
Let's head into maybe some mechanical details. Do you want to... So I have a few things about AutoCAD that I could share if you don't mind before we jump into the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, we can do that. Although, do you want to go pre-AutoCAD?
What do you have that's pre-AutoCAD?
236 BCE with Archimedes?
Yeah, okay. Take us to pre-AutoCAD, Kirk. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's talk about elevators for a hot second because we got to know where we started from. If you're looking at this picture, it's literally a dude with a blonde curly wig, a red jacket, and it looks like he's holding Rapunzel's hair.
He's like spinning it onto
He's
some
spinning.
spindles.
It's ridiculous. So elevators, pre-AutoCAD in 236 BCE, Archimedes is credited with designing the very first earliest hoist device, which was a simple hoist with ropes and pulleys, often operated by humans or animals. But it wasn't until, honestly, and I'm going to get us real quick to the contemporary, the Otis brothers in the 1800s start developing steam power elevators. However, they focused on using these primarily for lifting heavy materials in mines and factories because they weren't safe or practical for passengers yet. It's not until, and again, I feel like this is like, so here's a guy, he's like lifting, I don't know, flour or something. Maybe it's ink for printing, but that was how these Otis ones, and you can see the patent for NR Otis back there. So Otis has been making these things since the 1800s, and it's cool seeing how they developed into making a ride system for Disney. Going back to the World's Fair, I feel like the World's Fair is the way to find everything with Disney, is to go back to a World's Fair and some ride system is connected to the World's Fair. But a game changer in elevator safety happened in the 1853 New York World's Fair when Elijah Otis unveiled the safety elevator. He demonstrated the new device that it would lock in place if a lifting cable snapped. So you can actually see here in this picture that a guy who looks like Abe Lincoln, who's Elijah Otis, is standing on this elevator platform. But you notice there's like ratcheting. It reminds me a lot of the rollback systems that you get for roller coasters. But there's a guy above it who looks like Otis's brother who's taking revenge on him with a knife, who just severs the rope at the top.
I didn't see that until you
Oh
pointed
yeah,
it out.
people are aghast too. They're like, "What in the world? Are you kidding me?" So, but yeah, it's great. It's great fun at the World's Fair.
The showmanship of the World's Fair of all the decades is fantastic.
Yes.
Just amazing.
Because it wasn't just like, hey, we first of all, who wants to see anything about an elevator? Probably nobody. But the fact that he was like on an elevator, lifted it up above the crowd, and then homeboy just cuts the rope is wild to me. But there you go. So, okay, traction elevator components. This is an Otis one. So, traction elevators use hydraulic pressure or winding drums. In the case of the Tower of Terror, we're going to be using winding drums. Traction elevators use steel cables and counterweights to move the elevator cars. And Otis had the best traction system because it allowed them to do greater speeds, particularly, and we had talked about this earlier, in skyscrapers. So skyscrapers are a big part of this. And the really, really simple, geeky, nerdy, a elevator tractor system is made up of the elevator car, which is what passengers or freight, and a set of hoist ropes, typically made of steel. The hoist ropes are made of steel loops, or steel cables that are looped over a traction sheave and a grooved wheel, and one end connects to the elevator car, the other one connects to a counterweight. This is going to be really important because we're going to use counterweights to create the thrill of both up and down in our ride system. The traction sheave or pulley wheel is powered by the motor, and its grooves grip the rope by friction, hence traction. That's where we get the term. There is a counterweight, which is about 40 to 50% of the rated load. In the Tower of Terror, we're going to use a counterweight that's equal to the weight of the passengers on the elevator car. There is the electric motor. It can be either geared or gearless. Gearless are high speed, geared are moderate speed for smaller buildings, but gearless is what we're going to utilize here in this ride system so it can be fast. They do use guide rails to guide not only the elevator car, but also the counterweight. And then there is a braking system, which is really important. And and it engages and disengages using friction pads. So just similarly to your car and your car using brake pads, there's a solenoid at the top of the motors. And when electricity is going through it, there's no being friction placed. But if there's no electricity, it automatically clamps. So
yeah,
there you go.
Super technical, but important to understand.
I wanted to make it really fast because it's scary stuff.
It's scary.
It's scary, nerdy, engineering type things. But you got to know how an elevator works so that we can tell you how to break an elevator and make it fun.
We'll probably see this diagram again, but I have this diagram by Martin Smith that he did of kind of how this mechanism works for the Hollywood Tower of Terror. And it's complicated. So we'll go through more of this in a minute. When designing the rides, you have to think about hourly capacity and throughput, right? So they wanted to design more than one elevator shaft because when you separate the systems, it increases capacity. So that's what we're kind of seeing here is there's 4 initial lift elevators, and then they kind of funnel into 2 main shafts that have the drive, that have the drop in them. But in order to design something like this, they decided to use some newer technology, which was an AutoCAD system. So I have a quote from the Imagineering story from Daniel Ju, said that ended up being the first project, Tower of Terror, where we decided to draw everything in AutoCAD. So CAD software is computer-aided design software, and this transformed commercial drafting in the mid-1980s when its creator Autodesk released a version that could run on personal computers. So before then, everything was drawn by hand. That's what Daniel Ju said. But the interesting thing is, Kirk, that I looked this up and I was like, I swear that they used some computer design for Big Thunder. And so I did look up that information from an interview from Tony Baxter. He said, that was the first ride that we did with the aid of computer design on the track. I would do a design and give it to the computer artist, and he would tell me, no, it won't work. The computer wants this. There is a spiral on Big Thunder near the beginning of the ride where it goes around and then heads back. The computer kept moving it over because it did not want that much track there. I wanted to shorten the length of track, and I wanted it over there because it looked good as a design. And I like the composition of the 3 summits, the pyramid composition of shapes. The computer kept moving the track, which made the ride somewhat less attractive. So 9 times I did a new design that I thought would solve the problem, and the computer would say no. So we built 9 tiny models to check the look until the computer said, okay, I will accept this. This one is okay. That was the one we ended up building, but it took 9 designs before the computer approved. So there was a lot of wrestling with the computer before they had AutoCAD released. So what I'm showing you here is the history of AutoCAD. I know it's really small for you guys, but you can see that there was AutoCAD came out, this Autodesk AutoCAD here in like 1982-ish down here. But probably the systems they were using before that was, full disclosure, I am not an engineer and I do not use these programs. So this is just what I know from this chart here. They have something called Glide and something called, I think it's Katia. That was in like the 1970s or very early 80s. And so they were using like an earlier version of AutoCAD, but AutoCAD was really what made them allowed to more easily, I think, do these designs and fully make them in the computer versus just drawing them by hand. So that's what I've got for AutoCAD there, Kirk. Shall we get into the weeds of how the Tower of Terror ride system works?
Sure, let's do it. The Tower of Terror. So I got to give a shout out to, this is from How Disney's Tower of Terror Works by The Art of Engineering. Really, really good all-encompassing video that did his own like drafting images. So I'm like stealing from them because I didn't have any of the AutoCAD specifically from the tower. We have blueprints from the tower, but I don't think we need to reference those now. We need to be more generic.
Yeah, and I will say that this entire video is fantastic if you really want to get a detailed look into how the tower works. So make sure you check out Art of Engineering, and we'll link it in the show notes for you guys as well.
Yeah, this is a fantastic, like really in-depth and really detail-oriented engineering perspective of the Tower of Terror. So if you want more, check them out. So what we are looking at is what would be an AutoCAD diagram. Again, it has that blue background and then white lines. And this is like when I was in high school, I took AutoCAD because I'm geeky like that. And I just was just draw in it. I honestly didn't know the engineering perspective of things, but I at least know how to monkey around with the system and how to place things. So if we look in our dead center, that is where our elevators shaft is. You'll notice that there are two different cables, and there's also going to be redundancies on these cables as well. So our little elevator car is unique in the Tower of Terror because it is not connected fully the entire time. It can actually disengage from the elevator, which everyone who has ridden the attraction knows that the elevator does move around and isn't always in an elevator shaft. So I think the best way to approach this is to dissect each one in order of the show sequence. And I'm going to just be really simplistic on this rather than go into major details because I want to share each like scene separately. So, and there's some like tech that happens within each one. So when you first enter the elevator itself, it is in that 105-foot elevator shaft. It has already moved and displaced itself, and it's actually sitting on a floor above, which is where the boiler room is at. So the boiler room is where you enter in and load into this elevator car. Now, this elevator car only goes up. This does not go up, down. It just goes up. And it retracts and actually attaches to the top. So, it's pretty cool system in the way that it locks in onto this platform that's below, and the platform will lift up the elevator car that's attached to that, motor on the top. When it gets to each individual show scene, it will stop, it will open up, the show scene will commence, and then it'll move us to the fifth dimension. So when we're actually getting into the Twilight Zone where, the ride vehicle itself is going to disengage and it will go on one of these, which I think you wanted to talk a little bit about the, AGVs or these automated guided vehicles.
Yes.
You want to talk about them or you want me to?
I would love to talk about them. So an AGV is an autonomous guided vehicle. These are a wire-guided AGV that they use here. Daniel Ju said that this was a trackless system to have a cabin move out of the elevator into another elevator, which I believe was a very, very innovative. Basically, it's two different systems that the guests are riding, not to their knowledge. So the Imagineering story claims that Tower of Terror was Disney's first use of a trackless ride system, but that is actually not true. Fact-checking the Imagineering story a little bit, AGV technology was first used for Epcot's Universe of Energy attraction in 1982, where the traveling theater vehicles used wired navigation to navigate the ride's path. So it's not the first, but it is interesting technology nonetheless. And the way that this works, I actually have this really fantastic, this is for like fire. You know, if you're trying to like find the fire exits and whatnot and where the fire extinguishers are, that this is a diagram of that. But it shows this floor where they disengage from the main shafts, which are named Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, and move into the two drop shafts, which are the Echo and Foxtrot. So they're just A, B, C, D, E, F, right? So how they do this is the AGV is a self-guided passenger car capable of moving from one elevator at the attraction's back to through the fifth dimension and into the grand finale drop sequence elevator at the attraction's front, all on its own without rails or tracks. So this is what this looks like. This is probably one of the better pictures you'll ever see of this area of the going through the fifth dimension and traveling into the fifth dimension. It's just fantastic because you can see it's so well lit in this particular one. And you'll notice that like there isn't any like wires or visible things on the floor. There is like a line though on the floor, and that is key to this because the vehicle follows a pre-programmed path and communicates with the ride control system that way. So sensors are placed on the vehicle close to the floor, and then wires are placed on the floor, and as the vehicle is programmed to follow the line, like a line following robot would. So that's the kind of technology that it uses here.
I'm gonna add a little bit more geekydom. It's a low voltage guide wire, and it uses radio frequencies that go into the AGV's electromagnetic sensors.
The signals can also control the speed, direction, and orientation of the vehicle. And if the power is cut off or something covers one of the wires, it causes the whole system to stop. So some like a guest drops something on it, which is not likely but possible, or something just happens to it that if you see the tower go down, it's
Yeah.
likely this system that is
Yeah,
causing
it's
it to
apparently
go down.
very finicky because the way that if you look at that guide wire, like any disruption, so like if this even goes off its path just a little bit, like a fraction, it's not on track. Even though it's I always wondered why on earth did they not upgrade this style of ride system like during any refurb if this is such a major hang up for when the tower goes down.
They must be so integrated into the system that it was too expensive maybe to do or whatnot. But I agree. It's like, it's probably the biggest headache they have with the tower.
Right.
If that is my understanding, is this is what always causes it to go down. And it's such a huge safety thing too, because it has to go in the right direction or it's going to crash into something. Right. So it automatically locks down and stops.
Just end up in the eyeball. Oh!
You really are in the fifth dimension. The ride vehicles are powered by battery banks, and there are 5 charger stations to convert induced AC power to DC power in order to maintain the steady power supply to the ride vehicles. And so just really fascinating system that this is 1990s technology, and it's still used today. So you're right though. Like, why didn't they upgrade it? I don't know. It's a great question.
We still use Oki data printers around here. I
love tearing the little holes, like the sides off of those.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah. Dude, I actually like the sound of a lot of old technology. Like, give me a 28.8 modem.
So I do have a quote that, this elevator really doesn't have any free fall at all. It technically isn't even an elevator. Elevators.
Boo! What a liar!
According to Lane Akiyama, elevators are used to transport people from floor to floor at reasonable speeds. I mean, we have an elevator that drops about 100 feet in a matter of seconds. So, Kirk, do you want to talk a little bit more about how this works?
Yeah, sure. The Tower of Terror uses the traction elevator system that was designed by Otis, using 2 massive induction motors, each weighing nearly 60 metric tons and producing roughly 2,000 horsepower. They drive cable drums and 4 solenoid brakes to raise and lower the elevator vehicles. The ride features 4 loading shafts, each with 2 drop shafts. Each drop shaft can execute 1 to 4 randomized drop sequences. I swore there was more. I don't know. I feel like everybody's like, oh, it's totally random. No, but there's only 4 of them. So now I need to just ride Tower and sit there with a notebook like a nerd and be like, okay, we went down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up, down, up, up, down,
I want to see you do that. Please.
I will.
Please.
I will. I need to know all. There's only 4 of them. There's only 4 sequences. Yeah. I feel like if we ride it like 15 times, we'll get all the sequences.
Well, can I mention just a little aside about the drops, but since we're here, sure, yeah. It did have a single drop when it opened in 1994, which is something we'll go into when we actually go through this ride. We'll talk more about exactly what that looks like. But they programmed it at night so people wouldn't see what they were doing, which I think is kind of fun because they did the 3 a.m. programming of the Tower of Terror. And then in May 1996, the ride was upgraded with a second one. They called it like Tower of Terror 2 in Imagineering. But people wanted more drops. That was like their favorite part. So having only 1 drop or 2 drops wasn't enough. And so they said they added a third drop. They called it the cocktail shaker version, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, that's the one that like it holds you and then like shudders. That's the one that scares me the most.
Yeah. And then they added the third drop. That was they call it Tower of Terror More Fear. And then in 2003, in January, is when the triple drop was replaced. And that was when they started doing the randomized.
The 4 randomized drop sequences. Yeah.
So it didn't start out with having so many drops in it. It was just one big one. But people really love the drops. So they wanted more. And that's what they did. They added more. So.
But does it have drops?
All right, Kirk, keep telling us what's
going on.
Dude,
this would honestly, like, everyone, all the time, people always ask me about rides, right? And the truth is, honestly, like, I want you to have a better experience when you're at the parks. But it is notorious that even on the most innocuous ride, something simple that's flat and doesn't look scary at all, people ask me, is it a roller coaster and doesn't have drops? People are really deathly afraid of drops and roller coasters, and Tower of Terror, stay away if you're of a fear of drops. My God, this thing has all the drops. It literally has more drops than any other ride in any theme park in Orlando, for sure.
It's the only ride my teenager will not go on. He hates it.
Yeah. That can happen. That can happen.
I've been trying to convince my other kids to try it, but because my oldest doesn't want to do it, then none of the rest of them want to do it. He's convinced them that it's awful. So I'm like, it's really fun. And they're like, no.
Yeah, that happens. But then eventually it turns over eventually, people change. I'm telling you, my kiddos hated it, sat on it for a year and didn't want to go back. And then eventually I was like, we're all going. It's literally 4-minute wait. We're doing it now. And it was like, okay. And then they went and they were like, oh my God, that was so much fun. Right? So It's just changes, your body changes, your mind changes, your thoughts on
That's what I always tell them. I was like, you just got to try again eventually. So.
You know what? I think this one, in terms of drop towers though, being scary, most of it's in the dark. So it takes away the fear of the height for the most part, except for when the doors open. But even when the doors open, you really don't get a concept of how high you are.
No, and I think it was probably scarier in terms of the height with the original version because of it, of the storytelling. But that's something we'll get into in another day because it's pretty fascinating. But we got to talk more about this, the system and how this works. So, Kirk, do you want to keep walking us through there?
Yeah, let's do it. So, ride system again. Going back to each drop shaft can execute 1 to 4 randomized drop sequences, combining launches and drops at speeds up to 39 miles per hour. Guests drop from a height of roughly about 130 feet or 13 stories, but the actual drop is around 90 feet because there is space above and below the tower to account for safety. So if they need to break below, the space below that they don't utilize is in case they need to put on like an emergency brake, and likewise heading up. But the amount of airspace on the top of the tower is less than the one that's below that. The ride system uses 2 steel cables, 2 on the top and 2 onto the counterweight system. The bottom cables run over compensation pulleys, creating a closed loop that allows the car to be pulled downward, achieving faster speeds than free fall. So yes, you are getting weightless, but you are getting faster than a normal traditional free fall, which is a huge part of why we're all, flying up in the air.
Right.
Yep.
It's like pulling you either direction if you're
right.
To dumb it down a little bit, just for those of us that are like drowning in the technical speak, it's just pulling you one way or the other.
One way or the other. I'm gonna pull you. I'm gonna pull you.
I love that song.
What?
I know you don't. I love that song.
When the motor spins one way, the elevator is pulled up, spin it the other way, and the car is yanked down. This push-pull design delivers intense, controlled thrills. For safety, there are 4 solenoid brakes. They are fail-safes by default. There's a mechanical speed governor on the elevator and counterweight. There's emergency friction brakes on the guide rails, air cushion effect from compression on the shaft's bottom, and shock absorbers at the base, not meant for free fall, but just as a backup. During the drop, the ride vehicle is locked into the lift carriage, ensuring guests remain secure and precisely tracked. Each shaft uses a smart primary position transducer, or an SPPD, that is monitored by over 70 computers. And this system utilizes Otis lifts, Eaton Kenway vehicles, and General Electric motors, and they drop via a mechanism that is called the direct drive system, allowing for exact control without any sort of slippage.
Slippage. It's your word of the day. Slippage.
There's a lot of friction. It's so heady, and I apologize, but I wanted for those that actually care about the technical to really float it in there. So.
Yeah. And so I want to talk just a little bit about safety with this, because I know a lot of people will.
Boo, make it fast. Just kidding.
But that's, I think, one of the biggest concerns is like, it's terrifying to the idea of an elevator, like cable snapping and you falling and whatnot. And here's the thing. They over-engineered this design with redundancy to keep guests safe, like way over-engineered it. So not only do we have the 4 solenoid brakes on the cable drums to control the speed of the elevator, right? And if the electricity is shut off, the brake pads are forced back against the drum, forcing it to stop. So if the power goes out immediately, it's going to stop. It's not like the power is out and now it's free falling. Like that doesn't. They also have emergency friction brakes on the elevator guide rails, which would clamp onto the rails if the solenoid brakes failed. the counterweight also has a similar friction brake as well. If both cables were to snap, which is highly unlikely, because remember, they only needed one cable for the weight of the vehicle, but they added two for redundancy to make it safer, essentially. But if both cables were to snap, it would trigger another set of emergency brakes in the shaft, which would clamp onto it and stop them from falling. If all of those safety measures failed, which is, again, extremely, extremely unlikely, the car falling in the shaft would create like a cushion of compressed air that would slow the car, and the shock absorbers, they do have those at the bottom that would try to soften the fall. They're not designed to catch this thing, so you would still get quite a bit of a bump, but because of the compressed air of the air in the shaft, it would slow down the car enough that it wouldn't be a tragedy. It would just be startling, probably, for everybody.
It would be called, I'm not paying for my annual pass no more.
And to my knowledge, none of the Tower of Terror rides have ever needed most of those backup systems. Like it already is done so well and engineered so well that if the power goes out, it just stops. Like, that's all it is. So it's extremely...
Otis has been cutting cables since the mid 1800s. They don't play around.
That picture was fantastic, by the way. So it's way safer than you might think it is. From being in it, it seems terrifying when you're in it, but it actually is way over-engineered for your safety, so you don't have to be scared going on it, except for the scary drops. So.
Don't be scared. We planned the scary.
Should we talk a little bit about construction? Move on from all the technical
Yeah, we can
stuff.
do construction. Let's do it.
And nothing
Can you
against
show all the photos? We need to see the photos. Honestly, I'm not kidding. These photos are my favorite. I've never seen any of them. I wasn't around when coming down during the building of this. So it's honestly, we're going to do our best, Kate. We're going to do our best to describe what we're seeing to our auditory listeners.
Yes. So this one here is when they first put up the construction wall on Sunset Boulevard. And it has a great little silhouette of the building, and then some things of the street, what Sunset Boulevard is going to look like. And so this says, coming in 1999, an exciting new entertainment experience from the golden age of Hollywood. I could barely read that, sorry. But this is what they put up when they're actually starting to construct Sunset Boulevard.
This is in front of the Trolley Car Cafe, so where the current day Starbucks is, leading into, like, if you know where that water fountain is on the left-hand side of Sunset, all the way to the Trolley Car Cafe, because you got to remember, like, we're building out that whole entire Sunset Boulevard section. So, like, to be honest, if I saw this, that's like a whole land expansion for a park.
Yeah.
So you got to put yourself in that perspective, is this is introducing a new land with a premier ride for the Twilight Zone that is going to be threaded as something thrilling with the Tower of Terror.
Yeah, it even says a new dimension in thrill attractions. So teasing that for the public. Then here is actually, we see the Earful Tower, I think is what we call it, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, the Earful Tower. I miss it.
Yeah, I'm sad that it's gone too. And it was such a throwback to the one that is in Disney Studios, because they have one that has 6 legs on it, which Roy Disney insisted on it having 6 legs instead of like 4 or whatever. And even though it cost more, he's like, no, we have to have 6. And that's what they told us on the studio tour. And I still don't know why. So I have to do a little more digging into that. But anyway,
here he complains about his brother putting up 1 turret.
He was just really wanted 6 legs on that thing. Who knows?
Okay.
But you can see behind it is the skeleton of the structure of the Tower of Terror. And I love the little banners that they have on it.
Yes.
It says opening 94 Tower of
It's
Terror.
like these large black banners that hang vertically down from the very apex top of the tower. And there's 2 of them, I guess, to me, denoting like the shafts, but obviously so you can read more.
Yeah. And I love that you can see Epcot in the background there with the Spaceship Earth too. So it's fun. Aerial
And the
view.
Imagination Pavilion.
Yeah. So then this is another one of looking down the street now, as they have built a little bit more of Sunset Boulevard, and they do have a little, a better picture of what the Tower of Terror looks like on the front, and a picture of but we still got that kind of like old elevator from the concept art and from the poster and whatnot. We still have that on there, and I couldn't read this text. It was so tiny. Kirk, I don't know if you can read any of it.
Picture, if you will, a deserted hotel rising above the streets of Hollywood, a thrilling ride beyond anything you've ever experienced, and journey into another dimension. Your next stop? Dun dun dun! The Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. In this episode, you are the star. Opening 1994.
It's fun. I mean, I'd be excited to see that and be like, hey, this looks really
I would
cool.
lose my mind if I knew they were building something like this.
It looks
Just
amazing.
it's like a thrill, and it's going to be a dark ride, and it's going to be like kind of quasi Haunted Mansion-y vibes. Like, this is right on my wheelhouse and definitely my favorite ride at Hollywood still.
So we can see it being constructed here a little bit more. I have a few notes on the construction that the structure of the tower required 150,000 cubic feet of concrete and 1,500 tons of steel and input from over 150 Imagineers. So massive, massive project to build this thing. And we did also mention that the tower itself was designed to be 199 feet tall because 200 feet. It was designed to be 203 feet tall, and they realized, oh no, it has to be under 200 because of the aircraft. They'd have to put a light on top for the airplanes otherwise. So
We don't want it to be ugly with a light.
So it's the second tallest attraction in Walt Disney World, next to Expedition Everest, which is taller by a half foot. So
Yeah, because they put like a statue of a Yeti on the top just to beat Tower of Terror. That's not a joke. That's real life.
yeah.
Another fun fact is they used over 27,000 roof tiles to do the top of this tower.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. So the thing we're looking at right now is the looking down Sunset Boulevard. We can see lots and lots of scaffolding is where we're at in the construction process here. I love that they did plant the trees fairly early though in this construction process. So probably,
but they were mature trees. Like they're pretty big palms that they transplanted in there. I mean, imagine these palm trees being at least 20 to 25 feet high already as they're putting them in. And then on the right hand side, you see like Carthy Circle with its tall, giant singular spire upwards, and then there's lots of like wood paneling planking each level of this metal scaffolding. So like it's so weird to see all of those stores and whatnot, just nothing was constructed. So like when we got Tower of Terror, we got all of Sunset, which also meant Sunset Ranch Market and Anaheim Produce and all of it.
Well, we mentioned, though, that these were just facades when they first built them. A lot of the retail spaces weren't actually added as stores until later because they didn't have a need for them yet. They didn't really have a need for Sunset Boulevard at all, but the Imagineers pushed back and said, even though we don't need this like run out that they were going to put under the street, that's why we were going to have Sunset Boulevard. It was going to hide the run out underneath the street from this free fall version. Even though they re-engineered it and made an elevator version instead, they're like, well, hey, we don't need the street anymore. And they're like, no, for aesthetics, we're not going to put this 200-foot tower next to this Chinese theater because it's going to look ridiculous. So they're like, we still need it. And they're like, well, we don't need all these stores and restaurants and whatnot yet. And they're like, but we need the tower to be the end of this long street for it to look right aesthetically. So
again, at this point, I would never argue that Hollywood is a half-day park now. A lot of people still do. I think that's misappropriated because of the amount of attractions and the amount of experiences you can have now at that park.
Unless you don't like thrill rides at all, maybe it's a half day, maybe, but it's still pretty big day with
but then it would be a no-day park. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't even, if I didn't like thrill rides, I wouldn't even step foot in this park unless I was a massive Star Wars fan. And then even if I was a massive Star Wars fan, grab a Magic Band Plus, you bounty hunt, you do Star Tours every single sequence, you do Rise a couple of times, you do Smuggies a couple of times, and you experience all the food. Like, it's easy to blow an entire day, not even leaving Batu if you wanted.
Yeah.
Because there's all those different like missions and stuff you could do. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
All right, let's look at a few more. We got more construction photos. This one's a great aerial view of them constructing the tower. And you can see the theater, the stars there taking shape as well. Which is always interesting that, like, I never think of it as add an angle to the street, but it is. It's like it's sideways, theater of the stars.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Yeah. Must have just been for
spacing.
Yeah, something
it's
like
kind of
that.
like a parking space. It's better to do those diagonal ones, even though I hate them, versus like the perpendicular.
Yeah. Then moving on, we just see more scaffolding on the tower as it's just coming together.
The angle of the amphitheater is almost identical to the angle of the tower.
It's true. And maybe that was part of the purpose. We know that they turned the tower to the side to make it look thinner because the original designs had it being more of like a square tower. But because of the ride system and them needing all of those elevator shafts, they had to make it wider than they aesthetically wanted. So they turned it at an angle so it would look prettier, essentially.
Remember, kids, turn to an angle. Tower pose.
Work your angles, kids. So we have more scaffolding. Here we see the Carthay Circle scaffolding has come down, but there's still some around the Tower of Terror as they are making their way towards getting this completed. This one I love a lot too, because you can see it's definitely coming along. Another aerial shot from up above as they make some progress. Then this one, you can see them actually starting to put the tile work and the colored concrete on the sides. They're going to make it look aged because it's a molding building from long, long ago. This one's really fun because this is when they're putting the hotel sign. They're actually lifting it in place for the Hollywood Tower
hoisting
Hotel,
it up there.
which is just really, really neat to see that and all the people up there. And I was looking at, do you think that those are functional like fire escapes or do you think they're aesthetic? Because there are people up there. But
there's people standing on them. They definitely, can they support weight? Yes. Are they functional with purpose?
Probably not.
I don't know. I don't know because I don't think anybody would ever... You would never walk... Could you imagine people evacuating by walking out the front of the tower? It ain't going to happen.
Well, I'm also kind of thinking like, the front of the tower was like blown off, but that section still would have been there because the part that was blown off, you can see there on the right? They had the two kind of like hallways or whatever that were taken off. But that part in the middle would still be there. So I think it's just aesthetics of like, this would be the fire escape for the building, which they would need to have if it was a functioning hotel, right? Moving on, this is when we're really starting to see it come together now. It's almost complete. You can see the big, where the lightning has hit the building, kind of blowing out. All the paint work is done on it and all the tile work is done on the top. Really interesting angle because you're seeing it from above, like from a helicopter, airplane looking down, most likely a helicopter, maybe a crane.
This is a 0.5 girlies intro TikTok. I like this because it's a really good shot of what that pre-garden looks like. So you can see our walkway that if you've ever been through the standby queue, and I know we're going to talk about this later on, but the standby queue is mainly dirt here with only the trees, not a lot of the like foliage and everything that they put in there. You realize how well landscaped and manicured to look like an opulent hotel's garden, although it's like beyond maintenance or watering or love, Yeah,
you have to think of everything here in Florida. It was just like swampland. And then they added everything that you see landscaping wise. And so when you realize that, you realize how good of a job they did landscaping.
Also like this is the only time that you get that angle where you see the bottom where they've done nothing. Like, could you imagine just standing in whatever that courtyard is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
There's
It'd
really
be crazy.
not much down there. Yeah, that's crazy. So I also have some construction photos for inside the tower, but not all of the things were actually created on site for the inside. So at the Tahunga facility in North Hollywood is where they made, for Florida, they made some of the indoor pieces of the set for the Tower of Terror. So this is Lane Akiyama that you see here, and she's standing in front of, this is the hallway scene for the fifth dimension, like when the elevator doors open and you see them, the people disappear and whatnot. That's what you're seeing here. So they manufactured this actually in California and then shipped it cross country, which is crazy.
and you may notice that like perspective wise, it's getting shorter as we go on, just like our endless hallway, where it's like a forced perspective thing where the back end is about 4 feet high.
Right. So Lane said, bringing objects that large onto the site takes forever. There's a whole lot of communications, a lot of hours, working around the operations of all the parks and the property. It's always challenging, but it's stimulating. So we look forward to those challenges. So she's saying like having to not only ship it cross country, but also like bring it into the park when there's no guests in there. So they have to do all of this in the middle of the night because you can't be like transporting the fifth dimension and like installing it with all the guests like looking on. Like they're going to do this when nobody's around. So she said they had to do all the programming of the lighting, the ride vehicles when there weren't people around, like around 3 a.m. So like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. was show installation, but 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. was ride installation. And labor was really thin at night. She said there was engineers at the top of the building, and she had to carry 5-gallon containers of kerosene to the top of the building for their heaters so they could stay warm, because there was nothing up there to keep them warm. And she said she had to carry it all the way up the stairs. This is 13 floors, because the elevators weren't online yet. They weren't, so she said they got a lot of exercise working on the attraction in the middle of the night. But you can see a couple of other things that this is what in the Tahunga facility, this is them actually manufacturing pieces of the Tower of Terror in that facility. And I love that they've got a box that says wood only, and it just looks like a place that they would manufacture wood things, carpentry and whatnot, as all we're seeing here in the photos. This one's really interesting though, because you can see them doing the detailed work on the arches of the doorways and working in that facility, making that, which I just think is fascinating. And then this is one of the ride vehicles itself, which we didn't actually talk about. And I want to just pause here for a second, because when it came to creating these Otis elevator cars that the ride vehicles are sitting in, Otis was super nervous about doing it. The whole project they were super nervous about, because they're like, we're making an elevator that's going to fall. We don't do that. We do the opposite of that. So they put a very strict weight limit on how much weight could be in these vehicles. But Disney wanted as many people as they could get for capacity, right? So they're kind of at odds here. So the weight that was left for the vehicle after the people, with the motor, the wheels, the traction, all of that, was really difficult to get the weight down and have it be strong, right? So they actually used 1960s aircraft technology. And instead of welding heavy pieces of steel together, they used high-strength steel and they riveted it together. He said high strength, I think is what he said. It was hard to tell. So they used something and they riveted it together like they do on airplanes from the 1960s. So I think it's lighter weight steel. And because they did that, then they were able to get within the weight budget of what they needed in order to manufacture these ride vehicles for Tower of Terror, so that they would not be too heavy to move them up and down safely. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think about Howard Hughes and how when he wanted to make the fastest airplane, riveting had to be reverse driven so that the rivets weren't on the outside to reduce drag and limit weight. So riveting and airplane technology. And I'm curious about the metal construction, if anybody knows the specific type of metal. I'll look to some more, but
I'm going to have to look it up, because I meant to look that up and then I totally spaced it. So
you're good.
Yeah. Here's another inside look at, this is on site now in Florida, of them actually making the lobby area, which is fun because you can see them putting the tile work down. The tiles aren't even all the way down yet. And there's, plastic all over the floor because they're working on making it. So it's an empty room at this point with fireplace and arches and chandeliers, but the floor it's not finished. So really fun to see the progress there. And then this one is a construction shot of the boiler room where you're loading into the service elevators. And they have kind of the elevator blocked off with some wood so that you don't actually tumble into it. But just kind of a fun picture of them. It looks like it's pretty far along in the project by this point. It looks actually like the boiler room.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of notes from Lane Akiyama. She said, I'm not crazy about heights or thrill rides, and this attraction combines the two. You're talking to a person who hasn't even been on Splash Mountain yet, but it's not just a thrill ride. It's a terrific story that's easy to follow, and the environments we've created feature some of the best and most sophisticated special effects Disney has ever done. This was before the ride opened, by the way. This is when she's making these comments. I'll consider this a successful attraction if guests not only talk about the drop, but wonder how we did some of the effects. Our effects people really outdid themselves on this attraction. There are things here I still marvel at. And then WDI show designer David Duran said, one of our goals was to make this ride a scary ride. We wanted to stay true to the spirit of the Twilight Zone. And in keeping with that, we also wanted to have a sense of wonder and a sense of mystery to it, as opposed to just horror. Just as a thunderstorm can be very frightening and disquieting, it also has a sense of mysterious beauty to it as well. And we wanted the guests to walk away with that. So I think they did a pretty phenomenal job of capturing that idea of this mysterious haunting, versus just horror, which I don't think it leans into that. I think it's more
haunting,
haunting and unsettling, as the Twilight Zone is, right? Do you mind if we do just a little brief touch on opening day real quick before, just to wrap this section up?
Yeah.
Get this thing open, so then we'll go in the queue. opening day for the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror was July 22nd, 1984. I have kind of a fun note from one of the people who was reading the script for introducing the Tower of Terror. And he said, there's this whole crowd of people before him and they all kind of want to get on this ride. And so he's reading this and he's saying, it's Hollywood in 1939. Let me take you back. And some guy in the crowd said, we don't want to go back. We want to go on the GD ride. He's like, let us on the ride. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
So he said he got through the rest of the speech, but talked really fast because he knew that the guests really wanted to get on the ride, which I think is really funny. The Orlando Sentinel called the attraction the longest, fastest, and steepest thrill ride at Walt Disney World, distills the essence of every roller coaster into the drop. A single gut-grabbing plummet that steals the superlatives from every other thrill ride at Walt Disney World. And Michael Eisner called it a spectacular ride that seemed certain to have a huge impact on attendance, which was true because they saw a 15% increase in visitors over the next 4 months. The final cost would exceed $100 million, but the Tower of Terror seemed so special to me that it was worth the investment. That's what Michael Eisner said. The attraction was so popular that plans were made to duplicate it for other parks, which we'll cover in later episodes. But what we're seeing here is a picture from grand opening, probably with the grand opening cast bellhops and some of the Imagineers. And then, of course, the fireworks going off are in and around the tower. But it looks lots of pyrotechnics for opening day, which makes sense. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Can I share one little thing since we're doing I didn't know if we were going to do this today or next week. No, you're good. You're good. So this is a commemorative ticket that they sold for the Tower of Terror. And these were numbered, which is pretty neat. So picture, if you will, and this is like an envelope that this ticket would go in. And it said the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. But this was like a billfold. And when you opened it, it had a giant, kind of pop out of the tower and guests where it looks like their elevator has snapped. And it says submitted for your approval, summer of 1994. And then it's kind of cool because this iconography is the first time that I'm seeing it, but for those that grew up going to Disney World and remember that drive when you left your hotel and you were going towards Hollywood Studios, and you would see that model, that facsimile with the elevator that was we'll talk about it for marketing material, but this was one of the first times that you kind of see that iconography of the tower, the car, and then in that billboard, that car moved, which was really fun.
Which I'm sad is gone now.
I know. They should have fixed it, but such is life, right? But on the back, it says, you're about to embark on a journey into time and space. Picture, if you will, the year 1994, the place, Disney's MGM Studios. You gaze around, the studio is twice the size you remember from 5 years ago. An unfamiliar street sign looms above you, Sunset Boulevard. You begin to walk past the Sunset Ranch Market and Theater of the Stars. You stop at the end of the boulevard. Before stands you the menacing Hollywood Tower Hotel, the Twilight Zone's Tower of Terror as it's known. You dare to enter. Your elevator begins to ascend higher and higher. You suddenly realize the consequences. Gasp for air. No turning back. Can this really be happening? Your next stop. Dun dun dun. The Twilight Zone. Now, I don't know if $45 plus tax was the cost of was this your entrance ticket to MGM? I think that's what this was. I think this was a ticket to get into MGM for that day.
Yeah, I don't know.
And it was $45. I'm guessing that's what it was.
Opening. Yeah.
It was the opening day ticket, but it came in this really, really fun commemorative pouch and sticker. But this was your admission for the day.
I love the way they styled all of this. It's so
fantastic.
I know. They had a great design team for this attraction.
They did.
I love it.
Yeah, super fun.
Thanks for sharing that. I think
no worries.
So I just wanted to get through opening day because I feel okay, now we've done all of the Imagineering things, and now it's we get to actually go and walk into the ride and start experiencing this thing. So that's where we're going to pick up next time. Is we're going to head on into the grounds of the Hollywood Tower Hotel, and that's pretty much all we'll get through is the grounds, probably maybe the wraparound porch, but we're definitely not getting to the lobby next week. I think that's as far as we'll get. And we have some amazing concept art. We have some amazing information about some of the things to look for in this area. And of course, we'll dig into the history and the landscaping and all the stuff we usually do here on Distory. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up this episode?
I might be buying this ticket later. How much is this thing? Can I use it to get into? It's only $27.
Oh man,
You think they'd let me in?
that's amazing. That's not
That'd be
bad.
It's only 27.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope you enjoyed learning how the Tower of Terror works and operates and some of the history of its construction. And next week, we'll actually head on into the outdoor part of this attraction and start walking our way ever so slowly through the Tower of Terror. So thank you guys for being with us. We appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next time for Distory.
Bye.